Somewhere in Peppa Town, there are two pigs who have never once opened their front door. No name, no face, not even a photo on a mantelpiece. And they're not strangers, they're Peppa's own grandparents. Half this town's grandparents have quietly gone missing, and once you notice, you can't stop counting. Because here's the thing, Peppa Pig loves its grandparents. Granny Pig and Grandpa Pig show up constantly. They've got a boat, a vegetable patch, a little steam train named Gertrude, and more screen time than half the parents on this show. So you'd assume every kid in this world has a cozy pair of grandparents baking cakes somewhere off camera? They don't. Some kids have one grandparent and a suspicious blank space where the other should be. Some have a grandparent who's never once been shown, and a shocking number of these piglets appear to have sprung fully formed from the earth with no elders whatsoever. So we went hunting. Every grandparent the show teases, hides, forgets, or straight up refuses to draw. And I promise you, the biggest missing grandparents of all belong to the one character you'd least expect. But we'll get there, because that one's worth the wait. Let's start with the grandparents who are technically present, but only halfway. The ones where the show gave a kid one grandparent and then apparently ran out of ink. The Sheep family's empty chair. Susie Sheep has a granny. Granny Sheep moved in with the family, and she's a real character. She knits, she fusses, she's got that classic grandmother energy of someone who owns 40 cardigans. Lovely. Except Granny Sheep is only half of a set. Where there's a granny, there is, by the basic rules of biology, a grandpa. And Grandpa Sheep does not exist. Not on screen, not in a flashback, not in a single line of dialogue. Now, normally you could shrug that off. Grandparents pass on, families change, the show doesn't have to explain everything. But the Sheep family has a bigger problem, and it's the reason Grandpa Sheep's absence stings so much. Because Daddy Sheep, Susie's actual father, has also never appeared. Not once in over 20 years. So on Susie's dad's entire side of the family, the men have simply evaporated. No father, no grandfather, just Granny Sheep, holding down the fort, presumably wondering where everyone went. And that means Granny Sheep herself is a mystery? Is she Mummy Sheep's mother, which would make her the one relative who actually stuck around? Or is she Daddy Sheep's mother, in which case she's the mom of a man the show erased, and nobody has ever asked her how she feels about that? Either way, the Sheep household is one granny propping up a family tree that's missing at least 3 branches. And we're only getting started. The case of the missing granny dog. Now flip it. Because over at the dog family, they've got the exact opposite problem. Danny Dog has a grandfather, Granddad Dog, and he's genuinely one of the best side characters in the whole show. He's got a boat, he loves fishing, he's best mates with Grandpa Pig, and half his episodes are just 2 elderly men gently competing over vegetables and sailing. Wonderful stuff. But where is Granny Dog? Danny's got a granddad who's around all the time. He does not have a grandmother. She's never shown, never mentioned, never explained. And for the longest time, Danny didn't even have a dad on screen either. Captain Dog was off sailing around the entire planet for the first 3 seasons, which is its own scandal. So while the dog family has now filled in the father, they've quietly left Granny Dog as a permanent blank. Somewhere out there is an old dog who never gets invited to the fishing trips, and I need to know why. See the pattern forming? The show gives you one grandparent, lets you get attached, and hopes you won't notice the empty chair beside them. Most of the time, it works. Kids aren't sitting there running a census. But we are. And the deeper we go, the weirder it gets, because at least those families have a grandparent. Some kids have none at all. The grandparent desert. Here's the part nobody talks about. Take a good look at the main gang, Peppa's whole friend group, the kids in every episode, and start asking who their grandparents are. Rebecca Rabbit, massive family. She's got a mom, a dad, a baby brother, baby twin siblings, and the legendary Miss Rabbit, who works roughly every job in town. Cash register, helicopter pilot, ice cream van, fire station, hospital, you name it. That's a busy, well-documented family. And their grandparents? Nowhere. Not a whisker. For a family the show clearly loves expanding, the Rabbit elders are completely absent. Emily Elephant, nothing. Zoe Zebra, whose dad is the postman and who has adorable baby twin sisters. No grandparents. Candy Cat, Pedro Pony, Freddie Fox, The whole friend group and grandparents just aren't a thing that happens to them. It's like Peppa Town has this invisible rule where only 3 or 4 families are allowed to have elders, and everyone else was raised by parents who apparently came from nowhere. And that's the genuinely strange bit. It's not that the show couldn't be bothered with grandparents. Grandparents are some of its most popular characters. Grandpa Pig practically headlines his own spin-off adventures. So the writers know grandparents sell, they just decided most kids don't get any. Which brings us to the family where the missing grandparents aren't just absent. They're a full-blown mystery the internet has been chewing on for years. Peppa's secret grandparents. Okay, this is the one I promised you. Here's a fact that breaks people's brains the first time they hear it. Granny Pig and Grandpa Pig. The grandparents you see in nearly every episode, the ones with the boat and the train and the chickens, are not both sides of Peppa's family. They're one side. They are Mummy Pig's parents. That's it. That's confirmed. So who are Daddy Pig's parents? Because Daddy Pig has to have parents. We know this for certain, and here's how. Daddy Pig has a brother. His name is Uncle Pig. He's married to Auntie Pig, and they've got 2 kids, Chloe Pig, who Peppa adores, and a baby called Alexander. 2 brothers, Daddy Pig and Uncle Pig. 2 brothers means 1 mom and 1 dad who raised them. Somewhere in the history of Peppa Town, there is a granny and grandpa on Daddy Pig's side, and they have never appeared. Ever. No name, no face, not a wedding photo, not a birthday card, not a "we're off to visit your other granny" throwaway line. In over 20 years and 1,000+ episodes, Daddy Pig's parents have been erased so cleanly that most viewers don't even realize there's a gap. That's the eeriest kind of missing. The kind where the show is so smooth about it that you don't notice the hole until someone points at it. And once you're looking, the questions pile up fast. Every single time the family visits grandparents, they go to Mummy Pig's side. Every single time. Grandpa Pig's house, Grandpa Pig's garden, Grandpa Pig's boat. Not once does anyone say, "Let's go see Daddy's mom and dad this weekend." Poor Daddy Pig, the man who gets bullied about his big tummy in half his episodes, apparently doesn't even get parents. So why? Why does the show give everyone else their grandparents? Well, some of everyone else. But draw a hard, quiet line around Daddy Pig's side. Theories in the puddle. There's the boring, sensible answer, and there's the fun answer. Let's do the sensible one first, because it's probably the truth. The show simply never needed them. Granny and Grandpa Pig were introduced early, they were popular, they filled the grandparent role perfectly, and the writers had no reason to complicate things with a second set. 2 more elderly pigs would mean 2 more characters to write, 2 more voices to cast, 2 more people to squeeze into a 5-minute episode that's already stuffed with muddy puddles. From a purely practical point of view, why bother? 1 set of grandparents does the job. But that explanation has never satisfied fans, and honestly, I get it. Because the show didn't just skip Daddy Pig's parents once. It skipped them on purpose, over and over, for 2 decades, while happily inventing new relatives out of thin air. And that's where the theories creep in. Some fans think there's a sadder reason the show has never wanted to touch. That Daddy Pig's parents are gone, and the writers decided a preschool show about giggling and jumping in puddles isn't the place to explain what happened to them. It's a kids program. You can't exactly do a tearful graveyard episode between the one about the pancakes and the one about the sandcastle. So maybe the silence is the kindest option they had. Others go further and joke that Daddy Pig's not being fully honest about where he's from. That the guy who can't read a map or fit through a doorway is hiding a whole backstory. That's obviously a joke. Probably. But the fact that fans keep reaching for these theories tells you something. When a show leaves a gap this big for this long, people will fill it themselves because a mystery with no answer is more interesting than one that's tidily explained, and the writers may have figured that out a long time ago. Why this might actually get answered. Here's the part that should make you sit up. Because for years, the safe assumption was that Daddy Pig's parents were a closed door forever. A gap the show would simply never fill. But lately, Peppa Pig has started doing something it almost never used to do. It's gone back and filled in its own blanks. The show has begun expanding the family in real time. A brand new baby joined the Pig household. Peppa and George got a little sister, and the whole thing was a genuine event, splashed across the news, celebrated by the kind of people who don't usually clock what's happening in a cartoon about pigs. If a show is willing to add a whole new family member after all these years, it's clearly not treating its family tree as finished. It's still growing, still being rewritten, which means the door on Daddy Pig's parents isn't locked. It's just been shut for a very, very long time. And imagine, for 1 second, the episode where it finally opens. Two grandparents nobody has ever seen, rolling into Peppa Town after 20 years of total silence. A reunion. A name, finally. A face. Grandpa Pig and Daddy Pig's dad meeting for the first time on screen, awkwardly comparing gardens. The internet would completely lose its mind, and I say that as someone who would absolutely be part of the losing. So the biggest missing grandparents in the whole show aren't gone because the writers forgot. They're missing because the show has been sitting on them, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose, as the one gap it's never chosen to close. Yet, the grandparents who barely count. Before we wrap up the search, we've got to talk about the grandparents who technically exist, but might as well not, the ones so thin they make Daddy Pig's invisible parents look well developed. Because even the grandparents we do have are weirdly lopsided. Grandpa Pig gets adventures. He gets his own train, his own boat, running gags about his vegetables, a whole friendship rivalry with Granddad Dog. He's basically a lead. Granny Pig, meanwhile, gets a lot less. She's usually at home, feeding the chickens, being sweet, and rarely getting a story that's actually about her. She's more present than most grandparents on this list, sure, but next to her own husband, she's underused, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then there are the grandparents who exist only as a rumor. The show has a habit of mentioning a relative once in one line, and then never following through. An auntie who gets name-dropped years before she appears, a cousin who turns up to every party while their parents stay permanently off-screen. Grandparents get the same treatment. A background elderly animal here, a maybe relative there, half of them so vaguely drawn that even the fan wiki throws up its hands and admits it has no idea who they're related to. When the people who catalog this show for fun can't figure out the family tree, you know the writers weren't exactly keeping notes either. Put it all together, and Peppa Town starts to look less like a cozy village and more like a place where an entire generation quietly slipped away. One granny holding up the sheep family, a granddad with no wife in sight at the doghouse, a whole friend group raised by parents who apparently have no parents. And right at the center of it, a pair of pig grandparents so completely erased that most of the audience doesn't know they were ever meant to exist. The strangest thing? This show is brilliant at grandparents when it wants to be. Grandpa Pig's train episode is genuinely one of the most charming things in the entire series. They know exactly how much kids love a warm, silly, slightly chaotic grandparent. They just decided, for reasons they've never explained, that most of Peppa Town wasn't allowed to have them. So we found the missing grandparents. And the honest answer is that most of them were never really lost. They were just never drawn. Which is somehow spookier. An empty chair you can grieve. A grandparent who was never even sketched is a hole in the world that nobody's supposed to notice. But now you'll notice. Every episode, every family gathering, every birthday party, you'll be counting chairs and wondering where Daddy Pig's mom and dad are hiding. So here's my question for you. If the show finally gave Daddy Pig's parents one full episode, what should it be? A big emotional reunion, or should they stay a mystery forever? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely can't decide. And if this cracked open a Peppa mystery you'd never thought about, we've got a whole pile more waiting for you. Thanks for watching.